MedBricks webcast is a new kind of healthcare media channel to break the silo mentality and foster interdisciplinary thinking. Our mission is to fill that gap and to create a curiosity through different lenses, tapping the passion that guided the historical figures in medicine and bringing present-day groundbreaking research to the front lines. We interview physicians and leaders in the industry about present-day healthcare challenges on our live programming. Welcome to the MedBricks webcast. This is Ramana Annamaraju. No, I'm not Albert Einstein. My guest speaker is, So let me, without further ado, I wanted to talk a little bit about it. I'm going to bring a guest speaker. Is going to talk about something important for the AI and therapeutics area. Then after that, I'm going to present proton therapy. How do protons do cure? They can use in the radiation therapy. They use in radiation therapy. That I'm going to talk about the subject. It's very quite interesting. So Dr. Uli Chettipally is a long-time resident of Silicon Valley. He is one of the first few physicians who got into the AI and all those technology. And then he gave a Google talk actually. And then he is one of the very few physicians. And then he has written some articles on the sepsis in the hospital. We're going to ask about that. And then he is now, we all know mind over body, but he actually mind runs the body. He's doing a therapeutics. We're going to talk with them. Let me bring him online. Dr. Chettipally, welcome to the MedBricks webcast.
Thank you, Raman. It's a pleasure to be here on this podcast. Thank you for having me.
So you've been a long time here in Silicon Valley. So you've been in technology. You were a MD. You were assistant clinical professor in University of San Francisco system. Then you were doing a lot of technology. You were dabbling with a lot of things. One of the things you did is create a curiosity with me was a sepsis. What are the tools you could use? Sepsis is one of the diseases that, explain what sepsis is, and then how that it is a big threat in the hospitals. It is a fatal disease, and then how we can prevent through AI tools. You wrote something on it. Could you please explain that?
Sure. So, my background is I'm an emergency physician, and I also am an epidemiologist. I have an MPH. The idea that when patients come into the emergency with fever or with confusion, especially the elderly folks, they end up becoming septic, or they're in the process of getting into sepsis. Sepsis is nothing but an overwhelming infection and the body's reaction to that infection. So you will see fever, you might see confusion, you might see decreased oxygen saturation, and it doesn't matter where, and then decreased blood pressure. So it goes into hypotensive failure. So no matter where the infection is, it can cause this overwhelming reaction because the body is not able to defend itself against this infection. And that is what sepsis is. And then if it's not treated, it'll go into septic shock and people can die from that.
So it's a very dangerous one, right? Is most of the hospital deaths are due to the sepsis.
Yes.
Is hospital acquired infection. It's actually immunity response to the sepsis is causing that problem, right?
That's right. And it doesn't necessarily have to start in the hospital, or it doesn't necessarily have to be hospital acquired. You can acquire any infection like urinary tract infection or pneumonia, even outside. And then when they come to the hospital or when they come to the emergency, they will already have some high fever and all the other symptoms of infection. So the idea is to treat it aggressively and treat it early. That's when you can reverse the process and hopefully save the patient's life. And so time is of essence here. And so the sooner you recognize that it is sepsis, the sooner you'll be able to start aggressive treatments, and then the sooner the patient will get better. Now, if you miss that window of opportunity um, where you're able to treat it, the longer you wait, the higher the mortality, which means the higher the chances of this person dying from that sepsis. And so it is very critical, time critical intervention, mainly antibiotics and IV fluids and other things like that. So recognizing it is critical, number one. Recognizing it early and starting intervention is also critical. But what if you can recognize it even before it is apparent to our eyes based on our current understanding and current diagnostics, right? You can actually predict which way the patient is going even before they get into that area where they become septic. And so that is what that's the kind of research that I have done in the past, which can predict sepsis so that you can actually be prepared and actually treat even before it starts, so that you'll have a high level of suspicion and be able to attack it even before it becomes severe, which means that you can save a lot of time and also a lot of hospital days, and the patient may not be admitted to the ICU. Maybe they'll be able to be treated on the floor in a medical surgical floor without intensive care. That's the difference it will make if you can identify it early on. So AI is very good at looking at patterns and recognizing those patterns and kind of creating a path where you can identify the path each patient is on, based on variables from the past, variables from patient's history, variables from even from just the vital signs. The way it is going, you can predict that, what are the chances of this specific patients going into sepsis in the future. In the future, which means that within the next 12 hours, within the next 24 hours, even that few hours of advantage that you can get, it'll make the outcomes much better, because you have caught the problem early on. And that's the advantage of using AI for this condition.
So you made a AI. Just so you told me what the advantage of the AI. You made a post recently, the controversial statement about AI, which is if the AI goes against the insurance companies, or worse, it goes against even the doctor suggestion. What do you do? Who is going to win this? So now ChatGPT is coming. There is a bot AI. So what do you think in this conundrum? How do we resolve this very tough situation?
So one of the great advantages of being a physician is that you're human, right? When you make patient physician relationship as the prime relationship, and it's a sacred relationship, almost, right? And in the past, everything a doctor says is right for the patients, and then usually the patients follow a doctor's orders. um, but then, sometimes the doctors may be wrong, but there's nobody else to tell if the physician is wrong, right? Well, the AI is coming up with huge amounts of knowledge, huge amounts of analytical power, much more than a human being can remember, assess, and figure out, analyze. And so, when AI is used as a tool for this analytic purpose, it can also suggest treatments to physicians. This is what we call clinical decision support. Clinical decision support is where technology tools can come up with answers or recommendations for physicians or nurses or patients to take a certain path in the treatment of a condition. Now, I've designed clinical decision support tools in the past, but we were using the technology that was available at that time. This was about 10 years ago, right? when I started doing this work. At that time, we were using logistic regression and statistics. We're still looking at 100,000 patient records, but still there is a limiting factor there. But what happens when AI takes over that function is that it will be looking at millions of patients. Instead of thousands of patients, it'll be looking at millions of patients. And so now we have computing power that can do that in seconds. We have computing power and tools that can do it cheaply. In other words, in the past, it was very expensive to be able to do that because you need very powerful and expensive computers. But now regular computers can do that. Even your iPhone can do that. So it is able to take these millions of data points and come up with predictions, predicting what the patient is going to go through in the future. Based on that prediction, it can also tell what treatments will be effective based on that prediction. And so you can even predict what can prevent the patient going into a bad outcome, right? So everything is based on prediction, and the prediction is based on millions of data points, billions of data points sometimes, and looking at patterns. And you can recognize the pattern, well, at least the machine can recognize the patterns and advise or suggest treatments that will be most effective in treating the patients.
You know, yeah, in AI, Dr. Chettipally, AI is a actually misnomer. Actually, is a machine learning more than AI. AI means you have their own intelligence. It is actually predictive. Prediction is the basis for the machine learning. But
Yes.
you know that I use I'm one of the first few people who used it in the board experiment and Chat GPT 4. And I see factually a lot of things they're wrong, factually wrong. Some of them are very good, they're grammatically right, but they're factually wrong quite a bit actually. So if the clinical decision support system, it has not for the patients, it has to be for the doctor to assess whether it's correct or not. It is a tool for the physicians, not for the this time at least not tool for the patients. Do you agree with that assessment?
That is true. That is true. That there are errors and mistakes, and the question is, well, that is this year. How will it be next year, or 5 years from now, or 10 years from now? It'll become very smart. Right now, it is almost competing with an average human being's intelligence.
Yeah.
So as it gets better and better and better, it will overtake human intelligence or human knowledge, right? And then it will be able to make better judgments and better decisions, or suggest better treatments than a human can. Now, if I'm in practice, if I'm seeing a patient with chest pain, yeah, I may remember the last 100 patients that I've seen with chest pain, or maybe 1,000 patients, or even 10,000 patients, if I remember, what would be the best, ideal treatment for a specific patient. But this can, if you extrapolate that to millions and billions of data points, and plus all the latest research, plus all the latest experience of patients that are going through right now in hundreds of different institutions, you can imagine how smart and how accurate it can become, right? And so it's just a matter of time that it will supersede what a doctor's decision, the accuracy of the decisions. So it doesn't mean that the doctor is doing something wrong, but it means that the doctor may not be as accurate as a machine learning algorithm or an AI algorithm, because it is taking a lot more data into consideration before coming to that conclusion. And so
So,
that's the point I was trying to make.
so what happens to the doctor jobs? The physician jobs are going to be in. They're going to. It's going to be a threat in the future. Is do you?
So it's like pilots, right? you know, airplanes are being flown every single day, even the largest airplanes, even the ones that travel across continents, over the oceans, they are basically run on autopilot. That does not mean that you don't need a pilot, right? They are
Uh-huh.
doing their job, the machine is doing their job, but you need a human being at that spot to make sure that it is doing the correct thing. And if for some reason that breaks down, if for some reason it makes the wrong decision, then the human being, the human pilot, will be able to navigate it, and who is fully trained and fully experienced in landing that plane safely. And so that's exactly what the doctors will be doing. The AI and machine learning tools are helpful in suggesting treatments, in providing all that information to the doctor, all that detailed information, so that the doctor will be able to make a decision, or the doctor will make sure that that information that the patient is getting, that treatment that the patient is getting, is not totally wrong, right? So it'll be a very a nice pilot co-pilot kind of a relationship with technology and human physicians. So you will need human physicians always.
Dr. Chettipally, you moved away from all those things in the technology side, as technology kept in mind. Then you moved into the different kind of therapeutic side. You're using now a virtual reality kind of therapeutics. Can you give us what inspired you? What caused you to get into this kind of therapeutics that you're thinking about? You're doing right now.
Yes. So obviously my favorite passion is, technology enabled care. How can technology help care, better, care for patients, care for people who are potentially sick? So I've been looking at all the areas in healthcare, all the disease processes, because, living in Silicon Valley, having access to all kinds of technologies, you have the luxury of picking which area you would want to work in, right? So after I got out of my last regular physician researcher job at Kaiser, I started a company called Innovator-MD. And the reason for that is to be able to find these gems of technologies, these gems of um, processes and startups and innovations that are creating change for the future. And so while I was looking at that, I saw this startup building a technology tool. It's a robotic device for rehabilitating stroke patients. And so I got very interested in that technology, and they approached me to join their team as a chief medical officer. So I joined their team part time and helped them develop the first prototype. Um, by the way, I have a daughter with autism. And so when I saw the machine, I was thinking maybe this could work for autism too, because if you're able to put patients in a deeply immersive state and give them a physical challenge and a mental challenge, what you're doing is you're creating an environment for neuroplasticity. Neuroplasticity is the process where the brain develops new pathways, bypassing whatever blockage that there may be. So in the case of stroke, there is tissue in the brain that is dead, and so we are hoping that this technology will build pathways around that dead part. In autism, there is a similar process that goes on, but we don't know exactly where that problem is. We think that it is where the thinking part of the brain and the doing part of the brain are, there's a disconnect. And so we need to bypass that. So our hypothesis is that this kind of a technology solution will work for autism also. And so Last year, we spun off Circa Therapeutics, which is my company.
Would you mind? Would you mind if I show you the video of silica therapy? I have a
Yeah,
video. Let
yeah,
me show you
please do.
that video. Yes.
Please do.
Turning. Doing good.
Yeah.
Just slow down, that's all. Writing, see?
Yes.
Got it.
Yeah.
Yes. You finished already.
So tell me a little bit about it, and then we go that I'll do presentation and come back and ask you about Silica Therapeutics, web, all the other. So you're saying that the mind is helping kind of you create a new connections by coordinating the muscles and everything through the mind and body coordination, and the new motor
Yeah.
coordinations will happen. That is what is your
So, what we are developing is a brand new type of therapy. It's called cognitive sensory motor therapy. So, when you put people in a state of deep immersion and you put a physical challenge, which is the riding of the bike, and a mental challenge, which is playing the game, which is staying on the path, in a deeply immersive state, what happens is that all the neurons will try to figure out how to. This is a novel experience, right? This person, that is actually my daughter Siri, but she may never have experienced this in this kind of environment, in this kind of situation. So the brain is firing all over the place, trying to figure out and navigate and learn this new kind of sensory motor interaction. That's what our hypothesis is, that when you put people in those situations, that you are creating an environment which is ideal for neuroplasticity. And our hypothesis is that when you go through this kind of treatment, that this neuroplasticity in the long run will help with symptoms such as aggressive behaviors, symptoms such as difficulty sleeping, symptoms such as anxiety and difficulty focusing. Those are very common problems in autism. And so we think that this kind of therapy will help people with autism. Right now, the main treatment is behavior therapy. Behavior therapy is where you're doing one-on-one therapy with a therapist and the patient, which means that you have to spend at least 20-30 hours a week one-on-one therapy. And that's a very time-consuming and expensive treatment.
and physically constraining.
Physically, it's very difficult too, because it's very painful to watch, for parents and others. The other problem is that there's not enough therapists. We need 60,000 therapists to be able to manage with the population, and so there's only 30,000 therapists available.
Mhm.
The third problem is that autism is increasing.
I'm telling my son to do therapy, PhD in therapy.
Yeah, it's a very so there is a crisis happening because the number of people being diagnosed with autism is increasing at about 8 to 9% a year.
That is stunning.
Every year for the last 20 years since they started counting. And so that is a scary number, which means that currently CDC says that it is 1 in 36 individuals have autism. Their numbers show. And so very quickly, it will overwhelm the healthcare system, and it's already doing that with the school systems. It's going to overwhelm the care providing systems once they become adults, because these individuals will have a normal lifespan. That means they will need people taking care of them throughout their life, which is going to be a very expensive proposition. So one of the ideas is that if we can provide this therapy, at least we can decrease some of that burden on the therapist, decrease the burden on the family, and hopefully on the society in the long run. That is our hope.
Dr. Chettipally, when we come back, I want to ask you how the physicians can participate or patients can participate, and how the insurance is, what is it, how the cost structure. I'll ask you. Let me present to this both of us together. See this presentation, and I need your opinion too. It is a very valuable for me. So I'm going to do a proton therapy. Proton is cancer is a curse of all the humanity. That is a need help from the universe besides the doctors treating cancer. That's what we are going to explore. So proton therapy is a huge equipment, is a medical device, is a huge treatment equipment. It is almost, I tell you how big it is. It's just mind-boggling. It is almost 767. It weighs 220 tons. It is 7 because the magnet and everything together. It's almost 767 fully loaded. 21 miles cables inside. There's a 12-foot thick concrete walls to put this to radiation and all those things, and 300 piers, the columns that will be installed to support this equipment. So that is a huge undertaking in the construction undertaking. But so what is that they're doing? The proton is a size you would be surprised. The protons stays in the nucleus. One is actually it determines the number of protons, determines the identity of an element. If one proton in the nucleus, it is hydrogen. 6 protons in the nucleus is a carbon. So it determines the identity of the element. In this case, hydrogen itself, one proton in the nucleus, 1 electron in the outer orbits. So the proton size is 0.8 femtometers. Is a one quadrillionth of a meter. 1 quadrillionth of a meter. That means if you take an atom and then you extrapolate to the size of the Earth, and then the football field is the size of the proton, that's just unbelievably small. To drive that little rascal, you need a huge equipment that I mentioned you. So that is a surprising. That is what I want to show you, how I'll show you how big is that equipment is. You will be just let me show you that equipment. This is a huge.
Insignificant though this bottle of compressed hydrogen gas looks, it marks the beginning of the world's largest and most powerful particle accelerator chain, culminating in CERN's spectacular Large Hadron Collider. Hydrogen atoms from this gas cylinder are fed at a precisely controlled rate into the source chamber of a linear accelerator, CERN's LINAC-2, where their electrons are stripped off to leave hydrogen nuclei. These are protons and have a positive charge, enabling them to be accelerated by an electric field. Their journey to eventually take part in ultra-high energy collisions similar to those following the Big Bang can now begin. This initial acceleration has caused LINAC-2 to be likened to the lumbering first stage of a huge rocket. By the time this packet of protons leaves LINAC-2, it'll be travelling at 1/3 the speed of light. It's about to enter the booster, stage 2 of the rocket if you will. In order to maximise the intensity of the beam, the packet is divided up into 4, one for each of the booster's rings. Straight acceleration is now impractical, and the booster is circular, 157 metres in circumference. In order to accelerate the packets, they are repeatedly circulated, and the electric field is now pulsed in the same way that you push a child on a swing each time they reach a certain point. Magnets exert a force on the passing protons at right angles to their direction of motion, and so powerful electromagnets are used to bend the beam of protons round the circle. The booster accelerates the protons up to 91.6% of the speed of light and squeezes them closer together. Recombining the packet from the 4 rings, it's then flung on into the proton synchrotron, by analogy stage 3 of our rocket. Let's just follow 2 such proton packets. The proton synchrotron is 628 meters in circumference, and they circulate for 1.2 seconds, reaching over 99.9% of the velocity of light. It's here that the point of transition is reached, a point where the energy added to the protons by the pulsating electric field cannot translate into increased velocity, as they're already approaching the limiting speed of light. Instead, the added energy manifests itself as increasing mass of the protons. In short, the protons can't go faster, so they get heavier. The microscopic kinetic energy of each proton is measured in units called electron volts, and now the energy of each proton has risen to 25 giga-electron volts, or GeV. The protons are now 25 times heavier than they are at rest. The packets of protons are now channeled into stage 4, the superproton synchrotron, a huge ring 7 kilometers in circumference, designed specifically to accept protons at this energy and increase it to 450 GeV. Soon, the packets of protons will be energized sufficiently to be launched into the orbit of the gigantic Large Hadron Collider, or LHC, which lies between the Jura Mountains and the Alps, and straddles both France and Switzerland. Lying deep underground, it has a circumference of 27 kilometers. There are 2 vacuum pipes within the LHC containing proton beams traveling in opposite directions. Using ultra-sophisticated kickers to synchronize incoming packets with those already circulating, one vacuum pipe has injected into it protons which will circulate clockwise, and the other protons which will circulate anti-clockwise. The counter-rotating beams cross over in the 4 detector caverns, where they can be made to collide. The energy of the collision is double that of the individual opposing protons, and it's the debris from these collisions that is tracked in the detectors. For half an hour, the SPS injects protons. Finally, there are 2,808 packets. During this time, the LHC adds extra energy to each proton, whose velocity is now so near the speed of light that it goes round the 27-kilometer ring over 11,000 times each second, getting a boost of energy at each revolution from the pulsed electric field. Finally, each proton has an energy of 7 tera-electron volts, and they're 7,000 times heavier than at rest. The magnetic force needed to keep the beams bending to the ring is so enormous that nearly 12,000 amps must flow through its electromagnets. This is achieved by making the LHC colder than outer space, so that its magnets become superconducting. Now the protons are ready to collide in the detectors. A steering magnet finally brings them onto a collision course.
Are you on mute? I can't hear you.
Yeah. So that is a smaller version. Sorry about that. The smaller version of cyclotron, we need 1/3 of the 1/10 of the speed of the light. We need to achieve that to use the radioisotopes to make it faster. You need a protons to run that almost 1/10 of the speed. You need still a cyclotron to move that protons. That's the reason that the equipments are so huge. Actually, United States, we have a 250 United States has 250 cyclotrons, but particularly related to the medical field. China has 175, and in Canada is 25, and India is 19. That's all. 1.5 billion population have only 19, and 35 countries have none. I met actually a doctor who wants to take a cyclotron to the Dominican Republic. It did not happen, but it is a really, really challenging for a lot of the health equity and the health, actually access to healthcare, quality of healthcare is one of the forbidding factors. So that is the cancer treatment is, the cancer is growing. Is not only adult disease now, the young people are getting it. So it's actually, there is 4 therapies are available. As a first option is always surgery. Second is a chemo, is a targeted, like a blood one, is a targeted the therapy. And the third one is a radiation therapy. The fourth one is immunotherapy, which is that CAR T cells, is invoking your own immune system. But here is radiation therapy. We're going to focus on the radiation therapy here. So in the radiation therapy, the story starts from Robert Rathbun Wilson. Is a Frontier, Wyoming. He was born in Frontier, Wyoming. He's a guy was born in the cattle ranches in 1914. His name is Robert Wilson. He was a brilliant guy. So, but you cannot stop him. He's smart, like Dr. Uli Chettipally, thinking very thing. Then he went to the University of Berkeley and actually University of San Francisco. He was here. And then also he got a PhD. And then he worked with the Los Alamos laboratories, one in the San Francisco, one in Livermore, another one in Los Alamos. He was working in one of the guys who started the cyclotron is Ernest Lawrence. That is the Lawrence cyclotron. That's why Lawrence Livermore laboratories are here in Silicon Valley, in the Livermore. But it is actually, it was Ernest Lawrence was invented the cyclotron. But the real thing is that Robert Wilson learned from him, and then he went to Chicago. He went to Manhattan Project, then Oak Ridge, then in Los Alamos. Then after that, he came back to Chicago. He became a founding director for the Fermi Labs, the outskirts of Chicago, but EVI is called. In 1967, they started Fermi Labs. That's where he got the idea of using the protons to treat cancer. That is a brilliant idea. He came out with this is the physicist Robert Wilson came up with this idea of using the protons to treat cancer. So what is a photon therapy? There is 2 kinds of photon radiation therapies are there. One is there is a no mass, no charge. These photons have no mass and no charge. They're like X-rays and gamma rays. You can hit that with what it does is it takes the tissues and the atoms in the tissue, it knocks it off the electron, it becomes ionized. Ionization means it is actually when the atom loses electron, it goes and seeks the electron next to the next atom next to it, and then the other one, then it grabs the next atom into the atom next to it. It grabs the electron there. So then the other atom, it's a chain reaction. It grabs the other atom's electron. So all the way it destroys the DNA. It is the cancer DNA. It is basically destroying the DNA of the cancer. That's the DNA damage. We want to do that. We want to kill that cancer cells. That is a goal. That's how they use X-rays and gamma rays they use to do the job. Through ionization process, just the knocking off the electrons, and if they become hungry to get the next door electrons, and then that's next door electrons grab the next door, and it becomes a messy, and then it becomes a problem, and then it damages the complete DNA. But the radiation therapy with the photons, the problem with that radiation therapy with the no mass, no charge, most of the time the radiation goes and hit the skin. It actually dissipates at the skin. Mostly it damages the healthy tissues. That's a problem with the no mass, no photon, because by the time it reaches the cancers, that in the inoperable cancers, some of them are, for example, in the inside all the way deep inside the brain. It is impossible. It's so mostly it cannot reach. So you cannot do surgery. It's inoperable cancers. You can damage the brain, so many ways. So what they do is they if you use a gamma rays or X-rays, what it is that it also damages the healthy tissues, because the problem with these kind of X-ray and gamma rays is that the moment it touches the body, it dissipates most of the energy, and by the time it reaches the cancer tumor, it has actually lost a lot of energy there, and by the time so they have to move around. So most of the time, these kind of cancers, they use skin melanoma, skin cancers, breast cancer. You could use this kind of X-ray beam or gamma ray beams. You can use it. You can do that. But that is, so you cannot use it for some of the cancers were deep inside, where the oxygen is not plenty available. So electron beam therapy is another therapy. These are particle therapies. The particles are electrons and protons are particles. These are not radiation. They're not photons. It has a mass and it has a charge. It is both. Electrons and protons both have a mass and a charge. Electron is a negatively charged. Proton is a positively charged. But electron still has the same problem. It's not a heavy. So it will, by the time it reaches the cancer inside the brain, it loses a lot of energy and damages a lot of healthy tissues. So that's why proton is almost 2,000 times bigger than electron. They want to use a proton beam therapy. That is a good solution for that kind of things. So proton beam therapy started in England. Actually, father and son, they don't look the same exactly. They have the same barber, looks like. But anyway, William and Henry Bragg, they are two physicists. They were doing experiment on X-rays, on the X-rays. They're shining X-rays on the crystals to understand the structure of the crystals. So they wanted to see what is inside the crystal, what is exactly. They're doing a physics experiment. They found out something strange in that experiment. Interesting. It's called a Bragg peak. That's bears their name, Bragg peak. Actually, Bragg peak is when you're going on a street, and then you're sitting, you were thinking and daydreaming. All of a sudden, you saw the red light, and then you have to stop. When you stop it, what it does, the kinetic energy is transformed into the different kind of energy. That's what it does. It lifts up your car a little bit in the back, and then it screeches the tires, the friction and the heat. So it dissipates. It deposits a lot of energy in the when you stop it. That's exactly what protons does. When you stop it, they automatically, when they're at the end, they put a lot of energy there and immediately falls down and it stops. That is, they found out the protons also does the same thing. That's the named after them, Bragg peak. It's a central theme of the physics of the proton therapy is the Bragg peak. So with that one, most of in the conventional therapy, in the X-rays and gamma rays, all of them, they dissipate while touching. Immediately after the touching the body, a lot of energy is dissipated. You get a lot of burns and everything. But in this case, in the proton, it goes all the way to the end and it deposits the energy at the tumor. That's an advantage. So then bombarding the tumor with the different angles they do. And so they use a proton therapy to the gantry, they use it, and then they bombard the tumor with the different angles. So you can deposit a lot of energy to destroy the cancer. That's to bombard the tumor and kill it. So how did they do it? They put a cyclotron, I showed you. That is a Robert Wilson who uses the proton. That's in the Fermi labs. He is the father of the proton therapy. That's why they call him father of the proton therapy. He's a physicist, actually. He's not a doctor. And then he proposed the proton therapy to the cancer treatment. So he was that he came from a small rural town of Wyoming, and then think about that how he became such a force in medicine. Then proton therapy, what they do is basically you can also to adjust where the tumor is, because the tumor could be anywhere in the brain or any place inside. You can adjust. You can put a water tank. You can really adjust that depth by water tank. As simple as that. Put a water tank in between. Proton therapy is a very expensive treatment. It's a very, as I told you, it's a huge endeavor. And then only 40 of them in the United States. Proton therapy, cyclotrons, we have 250 for the physics, but the proton therapy, which is it requires a cyclotron and the accelerator, particle accelerator, you need it, smaller version. It is actually only 40 of them in the United States. They see around 200,000 patients around the world that do the proton therapy. India has only 5. China has a 15. So think about that. India is a long way to go in the proton therapy side. Now there are coming up a new kind of technologies coming up. Single room proton therapy. Proteus as is producing a single room therapy. Still, a lot of technology is evolving in this area. So that's I went to the Lawrence Laboratory right here one time. That's one thing that I love it. So Robert Wilson Award is actually particle therapy cooperative group. There's a lot of doctors are involved in this one, and then they provide every year Robert Wilson Award to everybody. The neurologist George Paulson got the 1974 award of Robert Wilson Award. The next one is Dr. Michael O'Koon got the award in 2023. He got the award, the Robert Wilson Award, for the particle therapy cooperative group. This called. They use a particle therapy to treat the cancers, and that's what it is. So think about a man started from somewhere and it became one of the important forces in medicine. So universe, we all came from the stardust. So universe, we're a collection of particles, protons, neutrons, and everything. We're a collection of particles, and then we became a human in the life. And then universe has also gave the laws for those kind of hidden laws. We need to explore and find out what the laws of those governing those particles. Then we can find the treatments. That is the. Thank you for watching. Let me bring Dr. So tomorrow I'm going to talk about is a very interesting topic. It's a black hole and the brain and the hologram and computers. What is the thing common in this? Common in all of them. The black hole, quantum computers, and the holograms are something in common, and the computers and the brain. Actually, let's talk about the brain. We talked with the Dr. Chettipally. I'm going to bring him back. Let me bring him back to the. Yes, welcome back. So, what do you think of this proton therapy? I was presenting something.
Very fascinating. I'm sure a lot of hard work went into creating something like this of this magnitude, and being able to research that is also amazing.
Thank you. But your work is really helping patients. So Sirica Therapeutics, now. So where is the stage? What is the stage of Sirica Therapeutics, and what is our next plans for the Sirica Therapeutics?
So during the first week of May, we actually went to Salt Lake City and recruited 9 patients with autism to actually try the machine and give us feedback. And it was a very successful test for us, a study for us, because we wanted to make sure that patients can use it. So we wanted to check the feasibility, right? And then we also wanted to check the safety of using a machine like that. For example, VR can cause symptoms of nausea and motion sickness and those kinds of things, right? So we wanted to make sure that's not a problem. And we found out that's not a major problem. Also, some of these patients will have a history of being scared of things, right? Whenever I talk about this, people will ask me, are you sure, people with autism will be brave enough to sit on the machine and actually put on VR goggles? Well, we have the answer. All 9 patients, even those who have never worn a VR goggle, who have never played a video game like this, were happy and excited to actually do it. And all 9 patients completed the task that we gave them during the study, and they all successfully completed and also gave us feedback. So that was a big step for us because we are in the very early stages of this developing this technology. And the next step would be to actually bring 2 or 3 machines here to the Bay Area and actually have more people try them. as we are trying, different things, we are studying how it works, and we are studying the effect on patients and how it is helping them. And we'll be doing some clinical trials while this is happening. And so that is our next step. So far, I would say we are still in the pre-seed stage as a startup, which means that we are raising our first round of 800,000, and we already have some money raised. So we want to complete that round, and we want to do the work of the FDA work, the IP work, and also apply for some grants. And there's some technology development and team development that needs to be done. We think we will be doing that with this funding round of 800,000, and be able to take it to the next level where we'll be ready for the market, and also doing the large pivotal clinical trials. So that's the plan.
So it's a big endeavor, but it is actually is good for the VR is just entering into the market now. Some of the companies are just recently, some of the insurance companies approved VR therapy. I hope that is we're going to that insurance companies see this value of VR therapies, and then particularly you're combining physical and mental therapies together. And
Yeah.
mind runs the body, not mind over the body. That's very good. Thank you so much joining for us, Doctor. It is truly an honor and a privilege to talk with you.
Thank you for having me. It's a great service you're doing for the community, innovation community.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
We
I just I'm having a problem.
We are retelling their stories through our patented designs that can be worn on scrubs, t-shirts, printed on conference bags, and endless other promotional materials. Daily Wear for Medicine is the first ever of its kind to create curiosity in medicine through visual art. We at MedBricks are celebrating unsung heroes of the past who made enormous contributions to the field of medicine through our unique campaign called Daily Wear for Medicine. You can wear it, carry it, and give it.